Is your vacation rental ready for the future of travel? Join me as I uncover the trends reshaping the industry. If you're looking to outpace the competition, attract the right guests, and stay ahead in a crowded market, this episode is packed with the right insights you can't afford to miss.
You are listening to the Direct Booking Success Podcast, bringing you all the information you need for your short-term rental to stand out from the crowd. I'm your host, Jen Boyles. As an owner and manager myself, I know how hard it can be to navigate the hospitality industry. I'm here to help, so you too can have direct booking success.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Direct Booking Success Podcast. I'm Jen Boyles, your host. Thank you for including this episode as part of your day. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Caitlin Cassady. She is the VP of Marketing at Beyond, where she transforms data into powerful stories that drive real business results. She has over 15 years of experience as a communications and content marketing leader in enterprise tech. Caitlin brings a wealth of expertise to the table. She's also an avid reader, a recovering journalist, and my favorite, a self-proclaimed mac and cheese connoisseur. So Caitlin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm really excited to be here today.
I love this, mac and cheese connoisseurs.
I'd love to blame it on my son, but the truth is, I've been a mac and cheese lover my entire life. It's just now more socially acceptable for me to eat it as often as I do because I blame it on my child. So.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you, my daughter had, this is going to be maybe disgusting, but my daughter had Kraft dinner for breakfast this morning. But,
I love that.
She hasn't had it her whole life, but coming to Canada last year and discovering Kraft dinner and that fluorescent yellow cheese, she just went, what is this goodness? And I'm like, oh, no.
Sometimes you got to eat what makes you happy, not what is socially acceptable.
There you go. I ate Raisin Bran, just to put that out there. All right. So thank you so much for sponsoring and participating in the 2024 Direct Booking Success Summit. Love having you guys involved. And your presentation about the future of stays was amazing. It completely eye-opening. And this is really what we're going to talk about today. So let's start with a bit of a summary of what that presentation was about.
Yeah, absolutely. So over here at Beyond, we are data lovers for sure. And as we have seen the short-term rental market really evolve the last couple of years as COVID hit, and then we saw all of these various fluctuations around the globe where there would be spikes in travel trends and then decreases as the economy maybe got a bit volatile and consumers weren't traveling as often. So we really saw these waves. That also intersects, because I think that's something we all knew was happening. But what we noticed that was intersecting with that is that there is more and more data available out there to consumers, our guests in this industry. And what we noticed is that they were really starting to get a lot more savvy in how they looked for their vacation experiences, I'll call them. And so we actually dove in and did this massive consumer survey internationally to understand what guests were looking for in their travel requirements. And we found some really fascinating things. We found that nearly half of guests were open to using AI to plan their vacations for them. And we think about internet, around the world, that could be billions of guests doing this. So we found that that was pretty incredible. And what we also found is that really what they're looking for is that experience, actually. So when we did this survey, we really found that people weren't starting to say, oh, I'm going to go book a vacation rental in the 30A market in the panhandle of Florida. They were saying, I want to go let my kids swim in the ocean for the first time. They start big, and then they started narrowing it down based on their prices, the price that they were willing to pay, based on maybe where they lived, what type of experience they were looking for. And the reality is a lot of them are choosing short-term rentals to have their vacations in, but they're not starting there. So really the competition, we think of it ourselves as the competition is the vacation rental down the street or the next town over. The competition is anywhere someone can stay. That's where guests are starting is I want to go do X. Where can I stay to have this experience? And so that's really where we started to kind of come to this realization that all of these different areas of like it's hotel industry or it's the short-term rental industry or the airline industry, anything that in that bubble of travel, yes, we're a travel tech company. I think people can kind of get there, but what we really started to see is like when you think about the accommodations, guests don't think about a hotel versus a vacation rental. They think about like what's going to best suit me. So really, we're all part of this idea of the stays industry. And for us, on the beyond side is we want to encourage more folks in the short-term rental industry to think like their guests and think about like, what kind of data can I be using to get ahead of consumer demand? How can I make sure that when a guest is searching for anything related to one of my properties that I'm showing up first? Because I think all of the influx of data can be scary, but we've got to get in this industry on the same level as our guests first and foremost. Like we need to be as data savvy as they are. And fun fact, like they're getting better at using the internet and using AI and using all these tools available at their disposal to find the best experience possible and book that vacation. And we want to make sure that we're helping all of our customers be that listing, that booking that's like right at the forefront in their search.
I love it. I really do. I think it's a really interesting topic. And your presentation was really interesting because you've done this survey and you've got all this data behind you. And not being sort of a numbers person, it is a bit scary, overwhelming. But I love that we're digging into it in a more personal way. And I really liked your point about it's not short-term rentals versus another short-term rental or short-term rentals versus hotels. What would be the best solution for that guest for that holiday or that vacation? I do it myself. It's like, where am I going? What is the experience I want? So how can we leverage this insight? How can we leverage this insight to attract more direct bookings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, I promise this will be my only mini plug for Beyond because I do want to talk broader level, but understanding what your consumers, your guests are searching for is critical. So we do offer search data within our system where our customers have the ability to understand exactly what people are searching for on their direct booking website. So what we've seen is that lets them not only utilize that information in their pricing algorithms, because automatically, if we see consumer demand starting to spike, we can actually adjust prices based on like an increase or a decrease in demand. So prices can adjust, which helps with conversion on your direct booking website. But it also gives you this incredible wealth of information, which for me as a marketer, I get really excited about. You can actually understand when you get consumer search data, where are people searching from? So if you are in a drive to market and you realize you're getting a ton of search from like outside of that drive, maybe your market is actually heating up and you need to think about marketing more broadly to folks that may be flying in as opposed to driving in. Maybe you have a majority of listings in your portfolio that have a 4-night minimum because it's better for your housekeeping services, but you realize you're getting a ton of searches for 3-day weekends. How can you adjust that? How can you think about adjusting your operational spend and costs in order to capture more of that demand? Because if you got more bookings, you could probably cover the cost of the housekeeping, but you need to understand what's there versus what's not. And so that's that level of information that I think can really make your direct booking website just start to be so much more effective and impactful because you can actually start to adjust what you're offering, where you're marketing, what your channel distribution looks like based on that search data. And so I think that's step one. And obviously, like, yes, I personally would love it if everybody uses Beyond to get that search data, but the data is out there. You can definitely look for it. There are other vendors out there that sell some variation of it. You can get market level data. Even if you just want to get started, like get savvy with your Google Analytics and start to understand some things. But I guess my big call out is like, don't just rely on like historical pacing data. That is not enough today. Like that is not going to like help your direct booking website really start to shine and really start to be as like impactful as it probably could be.
And what do you mean when you say historical data? Because there's a difference, isn't there, between historical data and real life customer trends? So can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess I will say is like, don't just use historical data. It's important. In every market, you're going to have historical data where like, hey, our peak summer season starts now. Like, you know that as an owner or as a property manager. But what you don't know is like, is your booking window starting to shrink? Those are the kinds of real-time data overlays that you can lay on top of what you know to be like, okay, my peak season is May 1st to August 30th or whatever the case may be. Use that information, but then start to layer on this real-time data, whether it's like booking pacing in your market. What does your occupancy of like your entire neighborhood look like in real time? Like, what are consumers searching for? All of that, like real live data sounds a bit silly, but like real time data, because year over year, we are not seeing as much of those historical trends hold true anymore. Booking windows are shrinking. Even like holiday dates, like if you've got Easter in March one year and it's in April the next year, that can adjust things. But it's so much more nuanced now than just like did a holiday shift from one month to another. And I think to be competitive in today's world, you need to have that additional layer of data that is showing you what's happening today or this week or even this month versus what happened in the summer of last year. So
Yeah, so really important to have some sort of company like Beyond or one of the other vendors helping you with what that data is, but it's also trying to figure out what it means, isn't it?
correct. And I think that's a bit of the fear I've seen in speaking with people, and I completely understand it as well, is that you can get so much data out there, even if you feel confident about reading the data, knowing where to get it, what to focus on first versus second. I think a lot of that can feel overwhelming, especially for folks who are running the entire property management business. Like, this is just one aspect of what you're doing every single day and every single week. And so, yeah, I would say is for anyone out there who's considering adding more data and don't really know where to start, is take a look at your entire business process right now and figure out where are you the least confident about making certain decisions. Start there. Start to get some data in that particular part of your business and work with vendors. Like, ask your peers who they use. Look at vendor reviews online as well. Look for a vendor that can curate that data for you. Vendors that are just going to say, like, here's everything. Sure, they have a ton of incredible data, but what do you do with it? So especially if you are someone that feels like the time crunch is limiting how much you can think about the data that you use in your business decisions and your revenue management decisions in particular, look for some sort of system or some sort of like consultant, whatever you're going to use, someone who can help you figure out like what's the actionable data and start there. I know for me personally, and I've seen some of our customers do it as well, is once you get confident about one or two different pieces you're looking at, it kind of just starts to open up the world of like, okay, if this makes sense, now I want to go learn about like the next area of this data set. And so you can really kind of give yourself a bit of like a crawl, walk, run process.
And I think that the first thing I think of when I think of data and looking at it for our industry, I think of pricing. But there's much more, isn't there, that you can use this for? It's not just all about pricing, which is probably why you changed your company name too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, Beyond Pricing was the OG dynamic pricing provider in this industry. And we still do. Having dynamic pricing, being able to automate pricing decisions is still a critical part of revenue management. And we still very much invest a ton of resources into continuously improving that part of our product line. But it is not the only thing you should be looking at. Like, you should be looking at data to understand what are your competitors doing in market. But within that, like, what does that mean for your pricing strategy, your marketing mix, your marketing strategy? What distribution channels are you using? How is that data then informing like how you structure your direct booking website? How do you feed it into other channels? Like, there's so much more you can do with this data. Even pulling some of it back, we have a customer on the Florida Panhandle, Compass, that started using a bunch of data and was actually able to realize they could shrink. This is where my example came from earlier. They were in a market that had a traditional like 7-day booking window, like you booked Saturday through Saturday and that's what you did. COVID flipped that on its head and they were able to figure out a way to start offering smaller like lengths of stay. They actually saved money on their housekeeping fees because of the way they structured it. So they understood which part of their portfolio they were going to turn over at any given day. So instead of saying, oh, we have to do everything on this one day, they were able to stagger it, work with like more dedicated cleaning teams and keep it going. And that the data showed them how to do that effectively and efficiently so that they could increase occupancy while offering shorter lengths of stay. And they saved money on their operational costs. It was just this complete win. And that did not happen overnight because that is a lot of data to like crunch through and test. But that was ultimately, you can get to that level of sophistication when you're confidently pulling in the right data sets and testing them with your teams.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That's an amazing example. Totally overwhelming for me, but I can see how, it would take a while to actually get there. Now,
Yeah.
what about event-based trends that you mentioned? Taylor Swift in your presentation, and I'll say at the time of recording this, Taylor Swift has hit Canada. She's in Toronto and she's heading to Vancouver in, I think, a couple of weeks. So I know all the news everywhere. It's Taylor Swift, and all this. Everyone's getting ready for this influx of people and money and everything into the economy.
Yes, exactly. I love this as an example too, because event pricing or like management around events is so critical. But there's so many factors that go into it of just like, hey, Taylor Swift's coming to town. I'm going to jack my rates up like the 2 nights around the concert, which you should. There's more demand. But really what it does come down to is like, do you know when people are booking? So this is what we saw with some of her other like concert announcements where we tracked and analyzed it, is that she would announce a concert somewhere and there's this huge spike in searches, but people aren't booking yet. And so I think a lot of people would crank their ADRs up and then be like, oh my God, I haven't gotten a booking. Should I go lower? Should I go higher? And there was this bit of panic of, am I going to miss this window? Because in our industry, once the date is passed, our inventory is done. We don't get to like sell it out at like a warehouse, like, clothing or something like that, where you can pick up last season's pieces. So really what we started to see is like there'd be this huge spike in searches, but people are still figuring out like, can I get tickets? What part of the city do I want to stay in? Am I turning this into like a weekend with my friends, or am I just going for one night? Like there's a lot of other decisions that go into creating that perfect stay for them tied to that event. And so what we really encourage people to do is actually to watch that demand trend. And if there was still really high demand, like absolutely hang on to those high nightly prices. Like don't start to panic and fire sale this. They just haven't booked yet. Versus others, as we got towards the week, there was this clear line of, okay, people are booking now, demand is starting to drop. If you have not gotten a booking that night, now you really need to think about it. So there's all these different like event factors that go into it. And our revenue management team is incredible. On top of things like this that you can use search data for, we actually just rolled out this automation within our system where if you get a holiday booking, if you think about like Christmas, honestly, I bet Vancouver is like beautiful in the Christmas time. Like people would want to come and visit and get a bigger home for a family. What if you have high holiday pricing for the entire week of Christmas, but someone books from like the 21st to the 25th and that's it? What do you do with that second weekend? How do you price that? We actually built in, we know that once the holiday's gone, those are no longer holiday prices and that should decrease for you, but we automate it so that you don't have to remember to do that in the midst of everything else you are doing as a property manager or host before the holiday season. So events have such a huge impact on our industry, but automating some of those little pieces can help you make sure that you are really maximizing what you're getting out of it.
I love that tip, that you price high for that high week or whatever it is over Christmas, New Year's, but when the key dates are gone, the rest of the days aren't as important.
They're not as valuable.
It's valuable. There's the word.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, I think that's the interesting thing about events is like, there's the ones we have every year, the Christmas holidays, the summer holiday dates, and then you have these big, massive concert dates and events. So you do have to think about events on a regular basis, but how you treat different events is very different as well. You need to think about that strategically, not just big event, high price. Like that's step one, but there's a lot of other nuances in there to really just kind of flex that muscle and use more of the data available to you to make the best decisions.
And I guess people without the data, that's what they're doing, right? They say, Taylor Swift, jack up the price. Olympics, jack up the price. Whatever that big event is that's coming into town, a big concert or a play or whatever it is. But that's not sophisticated enough.
Absolutely. And Olympics is a great example. So we saw the same in Paris where there was huge spikes in prices. We saw huge demand. So people were booking. There was like a particular window. I think it was, the data is on our website. I can confidently say that for anyone who wants to go gut check my numbers right now. But I think it was about 6 months out. There was a huge wave of bookings. And then it kind of died down. And then all of a sudden, like 6 weeks before, there was another huge wave because the athletes were figuring out who was actually making it. So all of a sudden, all the families of athletes were like, oh my God, so-and-so is going to be there. Now we're going. So it was this like whole second wave. And you didn't know it unless you were watching the demand spikes where you're, okay, we're starting to see it creep back up again for these folks that weren't going to book until they knew for sure. And so I will be fascinated to see what happens with LA when the Summer Olympics come there next, because LA is massive, similar to Paris, where there's going to be events all over the city. Anyone who's got hot listings in LA is really going to need to be on top of thinking about what is their long-term and short-term strategy to capture as much of that demand as possible.
Do you think it'll be similar? Do you think you'll still see, isn't that before an Olympic, it's 6 weeks before that the athletes find out if they're going or not? Does that happen every time?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially for things like the Olympics, it's like there's a sorting process, right? Similar for World Cup games. Like as things narrow and teams progress, all of a sudden you have more folks being, now I actually know I need to be at this game or this event versus the spectators that are maybe just, God, I want to go experience this incredible event and I'm going to go and just hope I see a great game or a great competition. So I do think there are a lot of those kinds of big events where there's this kind of multi-layered approach to thinking about when your guests will consider coming to your particular region.
And it's not just about jacking up your prices to try to get the most you can out of something. It's also providing value and hospitality, but it's not being underpriced, isn't it? That's the point.
Correct. Yes, we've seen a lot of folks that they'll be thrilled that they're, I already booked up my whole summer and it's like January 15th. And I bet you could have made a lot more money this summer because if you were already that far booked out, it means you were way below the competition as opposed to the folks that were maybe 5% below. So they still looked very attractive, but they actually got better occupancy because they were just a tiny bit cheaper. Those folks are still making incredible margins probably versus the ones that just dumped it to a minimum price and were, I just want to get as many people as possible. Because you do have to think about things like housekeeping fees, upkeep. If you're fully booked, there's a lot more wear and tear on that property. So there's a lot of other considerations that go into like, what is your strategy? And I think for us, what we recommend is how much money do you want to make with a listing in a given year? Are you just trying to cover mortgage? Is it an investment property? Is it a family vacation home that you just want to make enough to cover wear and tear, but just kind of keep it up for the family? I think everyone has a different perspective on what they're trying to make money for. And once you know that, then you can use all of this data to create the right strategy that supports what you're trying to do with that property.
And I want to switch focus a bit because we're talking a lot about pricing. And of course, we're talking at that saying that there's so many other things we can use this data for. So let's talk about amenities and guest preferences, pools, pet friendly, hot tubs, EV chargers, these kind of things. Yes. How can you use the data to find out what amenities you should be offering?
Yes, great question. Again, consumer search data can show you what people are looking for. If you think about what you search for, like the last vacation I started searching for was like family home, one level. It's like a multi-generational family trip that we're going on. So I was searching for single level, kid friendly in this particular neighborhood. There's actually a lot of strings that people will search for. So you can actually start to capture that. A lot of people are only traveling with their pets. So we will say pet friendly, pet friendly, pet friendly. Or you will have folks that are saying, yeah, I want to drive my electric car on this trip. And they're going to be looking for someplace that is like EV compatible. Those are the kinds of things when you think about like the competition in your neighborhood, like you can't change if a house is lakefront or lake adjacent, but you can change things like, do you offer pet-friendly services? Do you offer other amenities? I've seen some pretty interesting things lately with folks offering upsell amenities where they'll say, hey, you can rent bikes, you can rent whatever from us. Those are the kinds of things that you can start to understand in the data what people are looking for, or look at the competitive data and see what no one in your area is offering and start to offer those kinds of amenities because that's going to make you stand out. And that's the kind of thing, if you think about it, back to like the original research we talked about, like that's what creates an incredible stay for a guest. Like you're no longer just a house they rented, like you're part of this incredible experience that they're going to talk about for years. that's what will bring people back. That's what will make people recommend you to their friends. So that level of amenity data can be a really critical part of creating like the hospitality side for your guests and get them excited about your property.
And this is where the likes of the OTAs, the online travel agents, Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, blah, 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 they can't compete, can they?
No, they cannot. I know that there's always a push that there's different experiences they offer, et cetera. But I think that's the critical part for a lot of folks too. Within your direct booking website, like you are focused on your area. You know what guests are coming to do. You have this ability to create this more human touch point than someone who's just booking on an OTA. That is a very clearly different experience. And so, yeah, being able to offer these amenities, being able to highlight, hey, we are the only hot tub in this gated neighborhood. You've seen some of those kinds of things where they'll call it out as like, you will not find this someplace else. Those kinds of amenities are going to bring people to your site faster and more frequently.
We've got all this data now coming to us at our fingertips. Can it level the playing field for smaller property managers?
I believe it can. One of the reasons I love being in this industry, I came from like a bigger tech industry before I joined Beyond. There are so many folks here that like, it's the mom and pop shops, it's small business owners. This level of data, you no longer have to be a hotel chain to have strong revenue management skills. You can use this level of data. You can pick, hey, I'm going to focus on just maintaining like the best direct booking website for my particular region. There's a lot of simple things you can do to use this data to just highlight everything and really make yourself stand out. Because I think what's critical in this industry is if you stand out from the next search they make, you've already won the business. Even if they haven't booked it that day, like if you have that incredible website that's showing pictures of the amenities guests search the most often, if you're pet friendly, have a guest photo with a dog there, things like that. Use that data to just create the experience. And yeah, you don't need to be a massive enterprise to use this data. You just need to pick which data sets are the most important to you.
So if you could give one key piece of advice to a property manager looking to grow their direct bookings in particular, using the data that a company like Beyond can provide, what would it be?
I would say is start small. Don't be afraid. Start small. The data is out there. And it is absolutely not scary. We said earlier, I'm a recovering journalist. Like I started my career in writing. Data isn't scary. Data is available to make all of our lives better. And so I guess my piece of advice would be take a look at your site, figure out what is not working. Or if you don't know what's working, call a friend and ask them to experience your site, walk through it, have them tell you where they got stuck, because that's your biggest problem, I guarantee you. And then figure out what data you can use to improve just that one part. When you start small and tackle the problem from the tiniest piece and then build outward, it becomes a lot less overwhelming than if you think about, oh God, I have to overhaul my site and how do I use search data and how am I going to manage this? Like that, I wouldn't do it either, but figure out, hey, I'm getting a lot of traffic, but they're not. That's a problem you can start to figure out and figure out, okay, I need to understand what they're searching for, but they're not actually converting. So what's the discrepancy between what they're searching for and what they're seeing when they land here?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Again, the insights that you bring are so great. You've got that survey that you guys have done, which was a really great initiative to have undertaken. And I guess if we go onto your website, can we find out more?
Yes. Head to our website. It is beyondpricing.com. If you go to the resources section, you'll find the survey data that Jen's mentioning. It's called the Stays Industry. It's one of the reports we have there. There's also a ton of other incredible information for anyone who just wants to start learning about like what questions to ask a provider. We have a whole section on here's the questions, ask them this. We really do want to help encourage people to start using data. And like I said, our guests are out there doing it. We've got to get ourselves up and be competitive in the same way. And Beyond really believes that that is going to be the power of how the short-term rental industry as a whole continues to grow.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me, Jen.
A huge thank you to Caitlin for joining us today.
And if you're interested in learning more about the services that Beyond provides or more information about the survey that they conducted, head to their website, beyondpricing.com. And if you want to join a community of like-minded property managers, owners, and hosts sharing how they're attracting more direct bookings, come and join me in the Marketing Hub, my free Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. Next on the Direct Booking Success podcast, I'm going to be exploring how you can get more direct bookings using Instagram. Until then, go out and take action for your own direct booking success.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Direct Booking Success podcast. For more information about this episode and others, head to the website directbookingsuccess.com/podcast. See you next time.